Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today we've got Weston Porter of Leilo here to discuss all things under the non-alc and kava umbrellas. I am so excited to dive right in and learn so much more, so let's get right to it. Thank you so much for being here today, Weston.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for asking us to come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Leilo is one of those brands that is near and dear to my heart, and over the years, just seeing the growth and expansion has been exciting on multiple fronts. So I'm really excited today to kind of dive into, the roots of it all, puns all intended, and what does the future hold? What should we be kind of focusing
Yeah.
on? Knowing all that. So, all that being said, you started with Leilo in late 2021 as the fourth employee, which is wild. So, what first drew you to the company and the non-alc space in general?
Well, so I had actually I had went to high school with Sol, who's our CEO and founder. And we had kept in touch through the years after graduating high school. And I knew he was doing this, interesting non-alc thing. And so I was kind of curious and keeping in touch. I would ask him about it every now and then. And then in the spring of 2021, I invited them to my wedding. I was getting married in that fall. So I invited them to the wedding, and we started chatting a little bit about Laylo and what it was, and I didn't know what kava was at that time. And then he came to my wedding. We chatted a little bit there, and I think I was, I was in insurance at the time, and I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do insurance for the rest of my life. So let's see what Soul has to say about this new exciting industry that's coming up. And so that's how I got into it. He asked me shortly after the wedding, we spoke about it briefly, and it was like, hey, we're looking for more salespeople. You'd be interested in coming on, and yeah, then I decided to join shortly. I mean, within probably a month of the wedding, maybe 2 or 3 weeks of my wedding, I decided to come over. Yeah.
That's so awesome. I love how quickly kava just, once you find it or it finds you, either
Yeah.
way, it just it has a lot of magic to it with what it does in life, which I think is so fun. I'm curious, was Lalo kava the first kava you ever had, or had you have any
It
other
was.
experience with it?
No, I didn't even know what it was. And so whenever I mentioned Sol and I spoke in the spring, he sent me some cans of it, and I was living with some friends at the time, and I handed it out to them, and I was like, gave a little backstory of how I know this guy, and I was like, let's all try this, and I was like, this is cool. It tastes good. I'm feeling an effect here, and I kind of knew in the background, I wasn't involved in it, but I knew there were definitely changes happening in, the alcohol and non-alcoholic industry, and I could tell he was you know trying to figure out a way to be a part of that. And just kava seemed like a really cool ingredient at the time. And I thought, then I did a little bit of research on it, and I was like, this is something that, is interesting. And I think that people are looking for, especially, handing it out to my friends and talking to my friends about it. I quickly was like, this is something that I think could be going somewhere. And yeah, then, I kind of kept an interest. We kept in touch for those following months. And then um, I think I reached out to him and it was like, hey, I think this is actually something that I want to do.
So, how has your role evolved from sales rep to head of sales? And what has been some of the biggest lessons along the way?
Yeah. Well, like I said, like you said, I started out as just a sales rep and working with my own accounts in the region. And just as we grew, I started to realize that um, there were a lot of, at the time there were about 100 to 150 kava bars at the time in 2021, and now there's upwards of 500. And I was kind of seeing, being a sales rep on the ground floor, you are faced with the changing realities of whatever landscape you're selling in. And so I quickly realized that there were a lot of people, there was a huge market, a huge growing market. And so we decided to really, double down on what was happening in the B2B marketplace because we saw all these kava bars opening up. They were really fans of our product. We saw all the non-alcoholic bottle shops. They were really big fans of our product. And so we just realized over time, like we need to be, spending more time investing with these people. And that's where, um, we started doing like sponsorships for different kava bars, whether it's a grand opening or an anniversary party, whatever the case may be. A lot of them will do big Halloween parties, as I'm sure you know, or New Year's parties. And so, we started sponsoring those, and we're really like, how can we be a part of this kava community? We didn't want to feel like, there's these kava bars and then there's the Leilo, the brand that ends up in grocery stores. We wanted to be a part of on the ground floor of this movement. So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of roadblocks along the way. I mean, part of that was, when I started in late 2021, we had, they had been selling product for a little over a year at that point, before I joined. And, the Kava community at the time, much smaller, but it found out about Lalo very quickly. And so sales really skyrocketed there for a little bit. But then it kind of hit a plateau because we realized, it was an education issue. Like not that many people knew about what Kava was. And we had kind of gotten the attention of like all the people in the country that knew what Kava was. But during that plateau and, this like crazy rise in sales, we were like, well, it's time now to hit the mainstream market with this stuff. And that was in, late 2021, right after I joined in early 22. But we quickly realized within a matter of, 3 months or so, like, hey, we're way too early here. And so, we played around and got a little bit of interest from some of the larger retailers in the country, but it never materialized into, anything game changing like those big retailers can. And so in, spring of 22, we took a step back and we're like, we have this existing customer base of independent kava bars or independent non-alcoholic shops or health and wellness stores, health and wellness boutiques, those kinds of places. They love the product. Let's figure out a way to be a part of that growth, part of that community from the ground up. And when the market is ready for us, we'll know. We'll know because we'll see the growth from the independents. We'll see some genuine interest from some of these larger retailers and larger distributors. And so the biggest roadblock along the way was just education. It's like I think, the non-alc space at this time too is there's so many there's so many great products and so many great ingredients that people are bringing into their daily lives. But there's also some that aren't as advertised. And so I think, people are hesitant when they hear about, oh, it's a root from the South Pacific that reduces stress and anxiety and can increase social ability. And like, okay, yeah, well, I'll believe it if when I try it and actually feel something. So the
Right.
education point of just like getting in front of people, getting them to ask, what is kava? What does this do? Why would I drink this? Was a huge block. So I'm located in Missouri, and so everybody at the company works remote. We're in California and Florida and New York City and Missouri. And so, when I first started, it was so frustrating for me because especially in Missouri, I always say there's a lot of good old boys that like to drink their beer. With nothing wrong with that. But when I would talk to the people in my life or the friends that lived here, I got a lot of, well, like, why wouldn't you just drink beer? Why wouldn't you? I don't understand. It just didn't compute
Hmm.
for some of them. And so just getting people to realize like, hey, there's some alternatives out here that are really cool and interesting, and you don't have to feel guilty or bad about drinking it. You don't feel like crap the next day. And so that education piece has just been massive. And that's why like, doing samplings at the non-alc bottle shops or just like informational postcards, little things like that. Because I think it's a pretty appealing pitch when you're like, hey, this ingredient does all these cool things and there's no downsides. And that's the other part of it. It's like, it's almost, if you explain it like that, people think it's like too good to be true. And so that was another roadblock for us. Like, no, it's not too good to be true. It is real. And actually, in the South Pacific, they've been drinking this stuff for thousands of years. Very similar to how we drink alcohol in Western society. They drink kava out there for celebrations and get-togethers and stuff. And so, but yeah, the education, man, was a really big roadblock. Just getting people to know what it is.
Oh, yeah. I've experienced the same thing all the time. My husband and I, anytime we are doing consulting for someone who's in the non-alc space, but not from the kava side, not from kava bars, kava lounges, but more so like a bottle shop that's interested in potentially carrying the product and they want to know more about it. And it's true. It's one of those things that's difficult, especially if you had seen some of the now very much proven wrong, but old
Yeah.
studies that were very false about liver toxicity and, what could occur when you're drinking it. And what was so interesting is every single time, every year, I look out for all of the reports on toxicity, like how many people called poison control and said help. And I didn't see any for kava. Like I didn't see a
Yeah.
single one. And that's so fascinating because people call over things that we don't have an issue with at all. I mean,
Yeah.
caffeine's on there. Like there are plenty of other.
Ibuprofen,
Yep,
Tylenol.
ibuprofen is huge
Yeah.
compared to kava.
Yeah.
So it really did get the wrong impression off the bat, which
Yeah.
leads me to my next question for you. How does Lelo fit into this new era of non-alc beverages, especially when it comes to, we're not just seeing it just in non-alc spaces anymore. We're starting to see
Yeah.
other places that may also even carry alcohol. How does Lelo fit into this new era of non-alc beverages?
Okay, so I've been in the non-alc industry for coming up on 3.5 years now, and we've really something we've talked about a lot internally is, obviously we're trying to keep a pulse. I mentioned we were kind of waiting for the market to tell us like, hey, this is ready for a more mainstream approach, and part of that was the way we've kind of seen it is there's really been three waves of I think what's happened in the non-alc industry, and the first one was you had beer and wine and tequila that tasted like tequila but didn't have any alcohol in it and it had no effect. And there's certainly a place for that in the market. And then the phase two was I think CBD is a really good example of the phase two and ashwagandha and these drinks with electrolytes and things that are very important. But those things are really great for keeping yourself healthy in the background, whether it be better sleep or reduced muscle soreness, whatever the case may be. But like, these are things that you take day to day that help you be a healthier person. And then the phase three, which is where I would categorize Lalo, is they change your mindset. They change your headspace, and they reduce, they make you feel more social or decrease stress and anxiety. And so I think all three of those phases are really important. And as the non-alc industry, changes and develops, I think there's absolutely a place for all three of those. But that's kind of how we see, we really want people to like, hey, this is a real substitute for alcohol. And if you go to a party, it's not about just having a non-alc beer in your hand so people think that you are, I, I don't like when people ask me like, why aren't you drinking or something like that. Like, I don't think it's a big deal. But when you're having a non-alc beer, I think that's for a lot of people, that's the best part about it. Like, I'm not going to get asked why I'm not drinking. Because it's really not you may have a drinking issue. They may just choose not to be want to drink that night. They don't think of something big going on the next day. And that's great. They can have something in their hand, but we want people to have something in their hand to make them feel comfortable in that situation. But also that's, putting people on the same mindset of those around you or the same wavelength of those around you that are drinking because there are those aspects of alcohol that people enjoy when they're in social settings. They just feel more relaxed and laid back, and it's easier to have a conversation and enjoy yourself. And so we really wanted to focus on that, the functionality of kava. And kava, like I mentioned, the phase two and some of the background things that a lot of ingredients do. And kava helps with sleep and muscle soreness. And if we're talking to a gym owner or people that are interested, we'll mention those things too. But I think what people are really interested in is something that truly substitutes alcohol. And that's where we feel like Lelo, is an incredible option.
I wholeheartedly agree. There have been plenty of days. I don't live this kind of life anymore, but back in the day when I was actively behind the bar, I'd be
Mhm.
out all the weekends going hard. There'd be DJs. I would
Yeah.
always like if it was a Friday night and I was bartending, like I wanted a lay low. That made me like the best server. It made me the most like
Yeah.
focused, but also I was having a good time and it's not like I felt like hungover and I couldn't work the next day,
Right.
right? Like it worked with me, which was cool, but it's not always a party drink, right? Like you can have
Hmm.
it for a lot of different times. So walk me through a day in the life of situations in which it would be nice to have a Lalo. For example, I know
Yeah.
Lalo does focus on like wellness focused people. So, what situations besides just being like, social, would you consume a Lalo and have a really great time?
Yeah, well, one of the questions we get a lot is, will this make me sleepy? Which is a totally valid question because if you drink traditional kava, it definitely has a tendency to make you not, not necessarily drowsy or sleepy, but it's not going to like give you energy. And so Leilo also has L-theanine and B6 or B vitamin complex in there. And that's really important for us because we want it to be great for a nighttime use, as you mentioned, in social situations. But during the day too, like I find that if it's really stressful, busy day, you think it would be kind of counterintuitive to have a Leilo. I really like it because it
Me
relaxes you, it
too.
calms you down. And like when you're, when you're anxious or you just have a lot going on, you've got 96 things in your head that you need to complete. But if you're able to just kind of take a deep breath, have some kava, relax, it helps you focus a lot more. And then, of course, L-theanine and B vitamins also, help with mental acuity and focus. But I like it during the day. If it's a busy day, if it's, if I'm just trying to just calm down a little bit in the workday, I think it's great. And then um, I know a lot of people will, because what's great about L-theanine is, and the B vitamins, it doesn't, like the way I say it, it doesn't give you energy, but it prevents you from getting drowsy or going to sleep. And so, or getting drowsy or getting sleepy. And so, at the end of the night, when you're just relaxing, you're at home alone. Like I know so many people, we hear all the time, they're substituting in Laylo, for the beer at the end of the day or the glass of wine at the end of the day. And so, I think those are probably the most common uses we have. My personal favorite is honestly drinking it during the day because you're working at a startup. There's a lot of moving pieces. It's easy to get stressed out, and so just taking a minute to relax and calm down. Laylo helps with that a lot. Kava in general does.
hmm Yeah, especially those of you who have brains like me where they're just constantly thinking. Like you can't turn it off. You
Hmm.
can't slow down enough even to
Yeah.
like, when you're like your fingers aren't typing fast enough and you're like, ah! Like
Yeah.
that's that terrible feeling. When you drink a Lelo, you're like, yo, like I'm just like Sunday driving.
Yeah.
Like it's not
It's
that you're
fine.
slow, you're just like going with the flow. And then the flow
Hmm.
always brings that like
Yeah.
extra creativity that you may have been too tense to have accessed before. Or, for example, anytime we're doing like design kind of work for our people, that's when I'm like, okay, it is time for a Lelo, it's time for a Kava.
Yeah.
And so that being said, yeah, I've also had it before sleep. It's great. And that being said, I know we talk about education being really important and we want to make sure that people are consuming this in a thoughtful way, right? So, what are some misconceptions that you experience when talking to people that you would like to clear up about Kava or Lelo?
Yeah, I'd say the sleepy one is a big one, which
Hmm.
we kind of already addressed. It's not designed to make you sleepy.
Yes.
But the other one, and this is, you had mentioned it a moment ago with the education piece of it and the misunderstandings around like it's so much better than it was. But if you Googled 2 or 3 years ago, kava, just like what is kava, the results that you would get were one, not favorable to Lalo at all, but also a lot of incorrect information about kava and its effects on the liver. And so that took a lot of time to, get better results on Google whenever you just like are trying to figure out what kava is. And there's a 2016 or 17 study done by the World Health Organization that um, you know, I think it's the language is there's no liver hepatotoxicity caused by kava. And so that was really important for us, for sure, to start citing that and getting that in front of people, especially some of the larger retailers or distributors, because they just took the time to go and look up what it is. They were not getting correct information, and just to clear up some other stuff. Like in the early 2000s, there were some studies done on kava that turned out to be false, and they found a lot of times that they had cited deaths to kava. Well, later found out that in every single instance there was a slew of other drugs involved and the study was not accurate. So it took a lot of time you know, to fix that. And like when you asked about the roadblocks earlier, and then you brought it up, I was like, yeah, of course. But I'd forgotten about it because we really, in the first year we ran into those kinds of questions and issues so often. First, year and a half, 2 years that I was here, but it rarely comes up anymore. And that's why the education piece is so important for us because not only do we want people to know what kava is, but we want them to know what it isn't, which is all of those things that I think a lot of the misconceptions that people had about it previously. So that has been huge for us, and we really don't run into a lot of issues with it anymore.
That's good. And I know that people who are just entering the industry now and they're like, what's kava? We're like so excited to explain it,
Yeah.
especially because it's so much more accessible. There are so many more places for examples and reference. But all of that being said, people who have been in the industry longer, who still have that sour taste in their mouth, I was shocked in 2024 when we really started consulting on a national level and talking to people everywhere and trying to just get the temperature for different regions, how they felt. Are there different non-alc beverages that are more popular in some areas than not? And why is that? And like, is there something we can do about that? And when I was talking to people, there were some who, even though I had the studies to back it up, and I'm like, oh, let me send you some information. They were so dead set in what they had learned in the past that they
Yeah.
weren't as open to it. And that goes to speak to the fact that, some people who are in this space do come from a sobriety background. And so they do have a little bit more fear about how it's specific, like, oh, how does it make you feel? Because some places will use words like euphoric and like, they try to upsell this thing as if it's like this almost like psychedelic or hallucinogenic experience when in reality it's really not. So I know time tends to heal many wounds, and I
Mhm.
feel like
Yeah.
this is one of them, especially since the Kava Coalition's putting out a bunch of new information, which is really helpful as well. I want to talk a little bit about innovation and moving more towards the future thought here. So, what have been the most effective strategies for expanding Leilo's reach? I know we talked about the grassroots effort, but like, why was this the main thing that was your focal point? And what challenges that did you have to overcome in this space? And
Yeah.
on that, I just want to say, I think Laylo is a really great example.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. We really try to be. And I mean, seriously, there are in the kava industry, especially, which is why you're doing the helping kava bars get started, which is great because there's just a lot of the it's not as bad as it used to be, but there are still charlatans in the kava space where, um, if I heard of somebody who was starting a new kava bar, I would do everything I could to send them to a good kava supplier or a good whatever supplier, whatever ingredients, because I knew of and had interacted with vendors that were not giving us good information. At one point, we had looked at getting I think it was a 70 or 80% extract, kava extract for one of our products. This was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And when we get it ourselves, we do our own third party independent testing. So this is supposed to be 80% strength, and we got it back from the testing, and it was like 7 or 8%. And so
Mhm.
my first thought was, how many kava are wasting their money on kava that is not accurate? How many people are trying kava for the first time, thinking it doesn't work because they got a bad supplier or a bad ingredient. And that really started to bother us. And so, whenever we would run across a new kava bar owner, I was like, even if you don't buy Leilo, like, please let me send you to these other vendors because there's a difference. You're not, not every vendor is the same. You're gonna get, you can have a chance to get stuff that is just like not at all what you thought you were buying. From a business perspective, when we realized that the mainstream market wasn't quite ready for kava, the business side of it was like, well, we should, there's low-hanging fruit. There's people that already love kava and love our brand. So like, let's double down on those people. Um, in terms of challenges with that, just from the business standpoint, working with independents is a lot more taxing. It's like you mentioned Sprouts, for example. Sprouts, you work with a couple different people and you get into 420 locations, but if you're going to get it into 420 independents, you're going to be working with 420 different people. And so just from, the personnel standpoint and the time being spent with each account. And then, especially in those early days, I know we've harped on education a lot, but, just answering a lot of those really basic questions on what is Kava. You're talking to somebody who they just heard about it the other day, and then they were searching, Kava on Google and found us, and they're reaching out. And so making sure that they have a good first impression of what kava is. I would say the biggest roadblock on business wise has been just probably the manufacturing of the actual kava or the Lelo product. Kava, if you ever worked with kava extract, it's very a difficult ingredient to work with. When it gets wet, it gets sticky, and I mean, we have probably just had to throw out upwards of 50 to 100,000 cans because um, the production run just went poorly, or something went wrong, or the kava stuck to whatever and screwed everything up. So
Wow.
just mastering the product has been really, and we've made a lot of different developments and innovations to where I remember when I first started, we'd always look, people would tell us that they had damages whenever we shipped product, or we had a lot of instances with leaky cans and things like that. And so um, I was dealing with that all the time as a sales rep in the beginning. You're like trying to get into this kava bar, that kava bar, and then a kava bar that's been ordering from you for 6 months calls you, and like half my order is soaking wet, and the other half is busted up cans. What am I supposed to do here? And so I would say, yeah, through that instance, just the all the bandwidth it takes to work with all of these independents. But on the flip side of that, it's been, so rewarding and so incredible because it gave us the opportunity, like Sprouts. What's great about the non-alc community and the kava bar community is, when especially really early on, is it, when somebody fell in love with kava or whatever non-alc, ingredient or category or brand, they felt like they have this secret that nobody else knows and they want to tell everybody. So you get these evangelists for kava or for Leilo. And those evangelists, they're in the kava bars and they're in the health stores, and so in getting in front of them and doing everything we can to make sure that they have a good experience with our brand has been, really incredible. And that's why like we credit the kava community so much with the fact that we can be in Sprouts and, hopefully are pushing this into the mainstream where more people know about it. But it's those early adopters, they fall in love with something and they want to tell everybody they know.
This approach is just so commendable because along the way, you're while yes, logistically it's incredibly difficult when you have hundreds of independent retailers, but on the flip side, you've got hundreds of independent retailers all over the country. So
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
interacting, you have all of this cool information, you've got market research up the wazoo, like you are in it, you know the pulse of the people, which I've always enjoyed back in the day when I would do some orderings for some kava bars.
Yeah.
It was always a pleasant and easy experience. And anytime there was any sort of feedback, everything was instantly just, it was wonderful. So you have so much insight, I'm sure, to the country. So I'm curious, if Laylo was a map over the US, what
Yeah.
areas are super into it? Where are we warming up? Where are we still cold? Give us the
Good
forecast.
question. Yeah, so I mentioned now, when I started, there was about 100 to 150 somewhere in there kava bars, and now there's upwards of five. I can't even keep track, but we think in our internal systems there's about 500 roughly, give or take 50 probably. And so over half of those, at least last we checked, were in Florida. So Florida is the hub for all things, not just kava, but non-alc in general, botanical ingredients in general. And so I think with that, it's kind of spread up, the southeast. So. Um, our best regions, the Florida and the Southeast for sure. I've seen a lot of kava bars in Tennessee and the Carolinas open up over the past couple of years. But then, beyond that, I think uh, Colorado has been great. Colorado is are people that are so open to new experience and new things. So that's been great. And then, as you know, Arizona has been good. I mean, you guys had some of the earliest kava bars, and Lacuna Kava Bar was I know the first in Arizona, I'm fairly certain, and
Yeah.
has been kicking it for a while. It's been great, and working with those people over there. And then California has been one that, especially 2 or 3 years ago when I first started, I was, initially for everything west of the Mississippi. And so I was like, why are there not more? Because like California population demographic, very similar, like for example. So I was like, what's going on in California? Why are there not more kava bars? Why are there not more non-alc bottle shops? Like I was just really surprised. And there were a couple great ones. Ocean Beach Cafe up in San Francisco. They're great. And we worked with them for years, but they had been around a while. But they were like one of the only ones in San Francisco. But that is a market that's been growing a lot for us. It's one, similar to Colorado, very open population. They want to try new things, new ingredients. And of course, there's the phrase, I think it's, Cali sober, right? So it's like
Hmm.
you're sober on alcohol and open to anything else. And so we fit into that very well. So that's been growing quite a bit. But, really, I think especially with Sprouts and gaining some interest from some of these other grocery stores, it's really started to spread. And I'll give an interesting one. Montana. Montana has become, I got to shout out Kobe Jeffers here. Kobe Jeffers is, we've worked with him for years. He's a former UFC fighter, and I've developed a really good relationship with him over the years. But he opened a kava bar in Billings, and this is another example of like why we wanted to double down on the kava bars. And the phrase that we always used internally is like, let's be a friend to the kava bars. And so he opened a kava bar. I don't even know when he opened the first one. It was before I started with Leilo. And then he just kept growing and he's growing that individual location, opening additional locations. And so um, we came on with the distributor about a year ago in Montana, and I cannot believe how much product they're moving because you would think like deep red state, they love their beer and whatever else, and it's like they're not going to be open to it, but it's grown so much out there. So that's been a market that's on the rise. Another surprising one is Iowa. Iowa's got like 5 or 6 kava bars just popping up. Um, so yeah, it's been really interesting to see which markets take hold of it. I think one of the thing I try to talk to my sales guys about this is uh, if you can get the pitch of like this is an ingredient that has none of the downsides of alcohol, but it reduces your stress, makes you feel a little bit looser and more social, reduces anxiety. That is a pitch that like most people are going to be somewhat, they're going to be, okay, well, tell me a little bit more about this. One of the examples I use is so I mentioned I live in Missouri and I had my HVAC guy come over and he was my air conditioner. And I do this all the time, but I just gave him a couple Leilos. I was like, just take it. Just tell me. All I ask is just tell me what you think of it. And this was like probably 2 years ago, a year and a half. And he the next day he texted me and was like, "Man, this is great. My wife and I tried it last night. I just bought a 12 pack on Amazon."
Aw.
And so it's like there are so many people that I think everybody knows. Like if you ask them, should you be drinking more or less alcohol? They're probably going to say I should be drinking less alcohol.
Right.
Everybody knows and understands that. And so, it's just a matter of putting the right things in front of them. One of the things we always talk about is we have to give people an excuse not to drink, and I think Lalo is such a good excuse not to drink. You don't sacrifice anything when you drink a Lalo over a beer or wine or whatever the case may be. But just putting, real things in front of people. But if you can kind of get that that initial kick of interest in people all over the country, they're interested in what's happening in the non-alc world right now.
And I love this answer more than anything because kava bars were the first place I had ever experienced in my adult life that were actually meeting places of a variety of different
Yeah,
people. So like I remember being so excited to go to college when I was a kid. I was like, yes, like I'm gonna meet all the people and learn all the things with all the experiences. And I remember being like, this wasn't as advertised actually because once I finally had my first kava bar experience where it was 2021 specifically when I was watching people who were literally like so polar opposite on the political spectrum and just having a conversation while they were waiting to check out at the register because like something was on the news. And it was like the most polite, just like middle ground, just like, oh, okay,
yeah,
because it was just kava. Like nobody
yeah,
felt adrenaline in the room. None of us. Like no one was uncomfortable. And it was something that it happens all the time. And, just how you say different regions, we talk about states on all over the country, that have a lot of different cultural backgrounds here. And like there's still a place for kava everywhere. Now, I'm curious because I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that Florida is the non-alc capital and has been for a long time, especially not only just because of the first kava bar in 2002, but also, like
yeah.
you mentioned, I mean, they've been killing it with all the botanicals for a while.
Mhm.
And, we see them, popping up in other brands now that are all over the country, but we know where it started. But when I talk to people from the East Coast, especially New York, they are convinced that's where the non-alc space started.
Oh, really?
So I'm super curious if there is a large Lalo presence in New York or if they still need to learn more about kava.
No, there definitely is. Truthfully, there was a lot more of a kava movement, and actually, the city of New York has really, you know, made it difficult for kava bars to open up and be successful there, and it's really a strategy or a tragedy. I mean, some of our best accounts 2 years ago are, you know, doing a fraction of the business they used to do or out of business because the city made it so difficult to operate there. So, so Sol, our CEO and founder, he went to Columbia University and he started it while he was there studying at Columbia in New York City. And so that was really the backyard of Leilo for in the beginning. And it was our best market for a long time, even ahead of Florida. And a lot of that really changed with the New York City. Once they kind of learned what kava was and what kratom was, and they really started to crack down on it. And but it is a great market. Now they have a lot of the non-alc bottle shops, and
Yes,
uh,
yay.
yeah, so those are doing great and opening. It is a shame that there's not more kava bars there because there's it's like one of the only places in the country I can say where there's less than there were 2 years ago is New York City. But yeah, it was really incredible there in the beginning, and there's still we still do well in that market, but I know there are more people there that would be interested if that's the reason I mentioned Kobe up in Montana is because what kava bars do for the community in terms of just knowing what kava is or being knowledgeable or even just being aware of the changing landscape in the non-alc community just so important for it. And so not having those bars I think really hampered the growth of kava in that region because um that's where people like you're a great example. Whenever how many people did you have come up at the kava bar when you were working like I don't even know how I got here, but what is kava? Tell me about this place. And you have to explain it to them. Like so many people, their first experience with kava is that experience being, learning from a kava tender what these ingredients are. And when you remove that from the equation, the market just moves a lot slower.
Just like a moment of silence. Like, I'm so sorry, New York. And I actually didn't know that Laylo started in New York. So that just
Yeah.
makes it extra like heartfelt here because one thing that Tyler and I do here at the Modern Mocktail is like, yes, we help clients and we build things, whether it's in a one-on-one retainer or in a group program. But beyond that, there's a lot of other work we do that is paid energetically by love, which is talking to local governments and saying, hey, for example, we see when there's a first kava bar in an area, if they are the first and maybe they aren't serving it in a way that is fully educational, then it causes problems for the whole county because then the health department will say, hey, I don't know about this, even though there are other states and other counties that are totally fine and like no one's reported anything to anyone
Yeah.
in a negative side effect way. We see local governments that get reactive
Hmm.
and they put a pause. But that being said, I feel very optimistic. Do you have hope that places like New York or other places, I mean, even Phoenix, Arizona, Maricopa County was playing real hard with how we were supposed to be serving
Yeah.
kava. Now they're kind of already like relaxed on that more. Like they're already just focused on other functional
Yeah.
things. But all that being said, I feel like there's an ebb and flow. Do you have hope for the areas that are having a hard time with kava? Like if someone is listening right now that's like, I want to open a kava bar, but it's not yet legal or easy in my area, what should I do? Like, what do you want them to know?
Well, I biggest thing that can happen right now is education. I think really, especially you mentioned it's always the health department. And I understand it from their perspective. It's a new ingredient that has an
Right.
effect, changes your headspace, and like they want to know what it is and what's going on and is it safe and should people in my community be consuming this? And that's totally understandable. And so that's why I think the education, I know we keep
Mm-hmm.
coming back to that, but the education is so important because if you do a little research and you try it for yourself and you learn the history behind this incredible plant and root, you realize there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be scared of. In fact, one of the things that has made my job so much easier and so much more rewarding and fulfilling is that, I talk to people that struggled with substance abuse or alcoholism, and now they're opening kava bars or they're a regular at a kava bar. And,
Yeah.
been these incredible outlets for people that, one, didn't have those outlets, and two, didn't have an alternative to whatever habit that they decided that they needed to stop and substitute it in Layla. And so, yeah, just, you know, getting it more in front of more people because then if they know what it is and they're not afraid of it. They're not wondering if there's something they should be doing different from the health department standpoint and making sure that people are safe. So I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful for the non-alc and kava industry in general. We're just kind of seeing it grow everywhere, and just I mentioned that we don't run across the negative thoughts that people have or like initial impressions that people had about kava. So I'm very optimistic.
Yay. And yeah, even though we keep saying educate, every time we say the word, we're saying it in a different context. And I feel like people think that like government bodies are like robots or are some type of thing that you can't go talk to. And I feel like that's because we always look at it from too big of a perspective, right? But in reality, all of our little towns and cities, like we all have government buildings that have real life human beings in there that really just
Yeah,
want to know what's going on. They just want to make sure that, when their kids grow up and have the access to this product, that they're not going to end up in a bad situation. So it's
yeah,
all about just talking to people. And it's really fun and empowering, honestly, whenever we've had the lovely opportunity to educate any government officials. We are always
mhm,
very
yeah,
pleasantly surprised with how like excited they're like, this is my favorite meeting of the day. I've been waiting for this one all week. All my other meetings are boring. Like
yeah.
they are open.
It is. Yeah, they are open, and it really just comes from a place of just not knowing what it is. And they, as you mentioned, they're a part of the community too. Their kids are a part of the community. They want to make sure it's safe. And so it is coming from the right place. But that's the duty of the local kava bars and the kava community and people that do know, like yourself, do know the truth about these ingredients to help explain in a very gentle and nice way, help them understand that this is actually a huge positive for the community and it's not at all a negative. The number of people that I've talked to that are just living healthier lives because of ingredients like kava or products like Leilo is astounding. And I think that gets in front of more people, it'll help more people out.
Oh yeah. Another example, this just reminded me. We've had a few clients who are in areas that are like high in substance abuse. That's what has inspired them to want to open kava bars or like non-alc spots in general. And some of them have had some really cool approaches where there's one that was opening right next to a police station. So they actually went over and was like, hey, not only are we your neighbors and, we just want to say hello, but like, I know that this county has a lot of substance abuse issues. So like, hey, just if there's someone that you run into on the streets, like let them know. And that was genuinely because, they wanted to clean up the community and they just had creative solutions to think like, what other facets of my community can I go into and provide these, edutainment experiences, right? Because you
Yeah.
got to make it
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, that's great. That is really good. That is really good. I've heard so many stories like that, like where they're just finding creative ways to get people in the community involved and get the word out about these cool ingredients. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very smart to do that.
Yeah, when I first heard that story, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, it's so obviously a great idea because it would cut down on drunk driving and so much more. Like, it's wonderful. Yeah, there's so many different
Yeah.
ways that you can help your community. And all of that being said, moving into the future with Laylo, right? What other innovations do you guys have on the horizon? Like, what does 2025 look like for you?
Yeah, well, we will see exactly what it looks like, but we are very optimistic about 2025. We had a trial run with Sprouts in 2024. It went very well. We're hoping to, end up in their mainline set, which is very exciting. And then um, overall, it's just, I say this all the time, but um, a year plus ago, we did not have people reaching out to us, other than like the here and there kava bar or non-alc bottle shop that already knew or, was familiar with the space. They would reach out to us. But, having larger distributors reach out to us, having larger retailers reach out to us, uh, it's just a huge sign of the changing landscape. People are seeing the writing on the wall. They know that this is a space that, if they don't jump into now, then they're very quickly going to get left behind. And so, um, for us, it's just continuing to get this in front of more people, doing more samplings and demos, and doing more education. The education is nowhere where it needs to be in terms of a, nationwide scale. We want everybody to know what this ingredient is. And so, yeah, for us, really just continuing to grow what we've been doing. I think um, the other part of that question, oh, sorry. What was the other part of that question?
See, are there any new innovations or product expansions
Hmm.
on the horizon?
Yeah, innovation. So right now, I think for us, people love the cans. We're going to continue to innovate the cans, change the cans in terms of, we're trying to continue to reduce sugar in there, make the flavors better. We've recently changed the kava extract input into the cans, and it's something that we worked really hard on and worked on for a really long time. That will be available here in the next month or so, which is going to be a big change. It's going to make the kava more bioavailable, easier in the production side to make the product. And so we want people to feel the effect the first time they drink it. We want their first experience with kava to be a really positive one. So just continuing to innovate the current products that we have. We've got kava in the cans and kava in the tinctures and capsules and shots. And so continuing to improve on our current products. I think there's a Leilo product for however you want to consume kava. And then the other one I think would be we got the new stick packs, like you mix it into water. So those have been great. People have really loved those for, on the go. People that really love it, take it hiking and whatever. You can put it in your water bottle. So that's been great. But, people really love the stuff we have now. So we're just going to kind of continue to keep improving on that when we can, and then continuing to just get it in front of more people. People, you know, they're interested. They really are. They're interested in what's happening in non-alc right now.
Yes. And shout out to the stick packs when we were at the Grand Canyon and we had all the things we were looking, we were enjoying the beauty of it all. I don't remember feeling so chill before because those of you who've never been to the Grand Canyon, like, yeah, it's pretty, but there's like a lot of people usually. And we try to go for sunrise so that there's a little bit
Mhm.
less. But point of that is you always get like a little tiny bit distracted, like, but you want to be in it, right?
Yeah.
And so when we had the kava stick packs, like we were literally like it was just so like you couldn't like you were just one
Yeah,
with
that's great.
nature. And
That's what
we
we
could
love to hear.
easily drive right after that. Like that's
Yeah.
the cool part too. We were able to relax, but also be like, okay, now it's time to move on to the next thing. So that was really
Yeah.
cool. Shout
Yeah,
out.
that's great. That's great. It's what's cool about it is it doesn't you feel it for like an hour or so, and then after that you can just go about your day, or you
Mm-hmm.
can drink more if you want, but it just, it doesn't change your day where it's like, let's say you went Sunrise Grand Canyon and had some beers. I don't know about you, but my
Yeah.
day is shot. The rest of my day is shot. I'm gonna maybe go home
Yikes.
and take a nap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that immediately made me sleepy.
Yeah. Yeah, just thinking about it. Yeah.
I like the fact that that 1 hour because it really did feel like a ritual, like a little like you get to timestamp the moment a little bit more than you would just with like a little liquid IV. You're just like, oh, I'm hydrating,
Yeah.
whatever. But with
Yeah.
kava, it's a moment, like there's no
Mhm.
shade to liquid IV. I'm just saying it's not a
Yeah.
ritual the same way that kava is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, I have one more fun question for you. And this one, there's like this, we're playing in La La Land. We're playing in Dreamland. Where do you imagine the non-alc space in the next 5 years? Like where will Laylo be in that? Like, what
Yeah.
do you see the future being like? And feel free to be zany.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things that's happening right now in the non-alc space with us is, where do we belong on shelf? In the actual retail location, do we belong sitting next to the alcohol? Do we belong next to the kombucha? Do we belong in the supplement section where all the, different capsules and like pills are? Um, so a carved out space for where non-alc, especially functional non-alc, should be. You know,
Mhm.
people that going to the store, having a place to go where they know like these brands they're non-alcoholic. These brands they care about what I'm putting in my body, what I'm consuming. They're using good ingredients, and they're um, really consistent with the product that they make. That's what I see happening in the future. And I mean, I think we're going to see this continual growth. My generation, the people that I'm talking to now, I consistently hear they're drinking less alcohol. they're trying, other substances to substitute it, or they've just decided not to drink. And so I just can see the continual growth that we mentioned before the podcast, before we started recording was, about 21 last year, 2024, 21% of drinking age adults did something for dry January. Maybe 20, maybe they only made it 24 hours before having a drink, but it was in the back of their mind, like we talked about. Most people know they should be drinking less, and they tried dry January. And so I'll be curious to see what the 2025 numbers are. But just continuing to introduce people to all of these cool brands, not just Layla, but all the cool ones that are out there. In terms of Magic Wand, there are still so many people that are hesitant, that are not open-minded to what's happening in the non-alc space. And I think, especially with a lot of the alcohol beverage distributors, I think they see it so much as threatening because they think, well, if they're drinking this, and they're going to be drinking the less of the products I distribute. And so just a general open-mindedness of people that are currently occupying positions of power in whatever retail chain or whatever large distribution, them being more open-minded to the different ingredients and non-alc brands that are coming up, because I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to be continuing to grow. I think kava is um, projected to grow for the next decade at like 17% a year roughly. And so just my magic wand would just be to get people to be a little bit more open-minded. It's gotten so much better since I've been here, but it would go a long way. And I think a lot of these people that are very hesitant to learn more or try it would be very surprised about how many people in their community are interested in kava or non-alc, whatever.
One of my favorite parts about recording these podcasts is when, I hear an answer like that and it just gives me a to-do list item. Like here
Yeah.
at the Modern Mocktail now, like let me tell you, 2024, we spent a lot of time talking to brands and established shops and bars and lounges. And this year we wanted to shift focus to be able to make a bigger impact. So we're always asking questions, where can we do that? We've already been talking to some government agencies, but what else? And I just think it's just like, you know, people who aren't in the beverage industry, I can't imagine that this is like as exciting to them, but like within like it's so mind-blowing to think of a section of the grocery store that is entirely unique and of its own. This isn't soda. Like you said, it's not all these other things. It has its own special and
Yeah.
unique thing, and that's cool. That's okay. And people from all over love it. So thank you so
Mhm.
much for, contributing your ideas and, having so many mind-blowing moments today. I definitely learned a lot, and I
Great.
know that people who listen to this podcast absolutely feel the same way. So it really means a lot that you're here. Anybody who's listening, of course, go ahead and take a look at the description of this episode because you can learn more about Leilo, Kava. There's going to be some links there. Go ahead and check them out. Also, Leilo on both their regular site and their wholesale supply site have a lot of really fun educational things on
Yeah.
there to go read. So, all of that being said, Weston, is there anything else you want to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, I think the last thing, just real quick, I think what you're doing is so cool. I think I mentioned,
Thank you.
and there's so many bad rabbit holes or the wrong rabbit holes in the non-alc or college community that you can go down, and having a place where people can really learn and educate about how this landscape is changing, how to be a part of it, what these ingredients are, what these brands are, which ones are doing this or that or whatever. It's such a great place. I mentioned earlier the kava bars, and me trying to direct them to the right place because there was nobody like you at that time where I could say, hey, just go talk to Marina and she will send you to the right direction. That has been so great because I know, we'll end it with this, with education. It's just been so important for us. So that's the last thing. And thanks so much again for having me on. This is great. And yeah, it's been great.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening and tuning in today. As always, if there's any questions you have, any resources you need, go ahead and send me an email, hello@marinamars.com. Even if you have something for Weston, I got you. I'll make sure you're connected. So go ahead and reach out. Thank you so much for being here. If you need anything, just let me know.